And I imagine that in the Church of the Resurrection that you lead, you have people with differing views over issues like LGBTQ,
Absolutely.
people from different sides of the aisle when election comes around, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
How do you manage that tension as a pastor?
Yeah. So I preach into this a lot. In fact, last Sunday's sermon was, I was speaking about this, but and just on the LGBTQ question, we surveyed our congregation. And of course, there's been a huge shift in our congregation over the last 20 years, just like there has been in society. But for our congregation, I had people saying, Adam, you don't understand. The silent majority is against you, about this. The silent majority sees it differently. I'm like, well, let's find out. And so we did a poll in an all church gathering. We had 1,600 of our people there for a Monday night meeting just to say, we're going to talk about this and where the denomination's going. And I'm committed to being a church for people who are more traditional on marriage and people who are more inclusive on marriage. And so, but let's see where you're at. And we surveyed the people, and it was, I'm making this up, but it's not far off from this. I had 3% of the people who were progressive and said, I'm going to leave. I can't stay in a church where everybody doesn't hold the same view that I hold. That was 3%. I had 3% who said, I'm traditional on marriage and I can't stay in a church that's not going to hold my view of, not uphold my view. Then we had, so that's 6%. Then we had 73% who said, I'm more progressive on marriage, but I understand why my friends have more traditional views and I want to be in a church with them. And 23% of our people said, I'm more traditional on marriage, but I understand why some are more progressive and I want to be in a church with them. And so what we found was that 90% of the people said, I'm okay being in a church with people who are different. Just don't make me hold that view. But if you're willing to show respect towards me, I can show respect towards you. And we can recognize that maybe this is about how we're interpreting scripture and we both love Jesus. And so that was and that was a surprise for a lot of our traditionalists who were like, oh, I didn't realize I'm actually in the minority here. And, but the majority want me to be in the church with them. And so we said, you can be traditional or you can be progressive, but you got to commit to love people. You're going to have people in your small group who are gay couples or, whatever. You got to know how to love them, and you can still have a view that's different, but you got to share that with love and grace and recognize that that's not maybe where everybody else is here at the church. Now that's, unusual in the United Methodist Church. It may be more 50-50 in a lot of churches. And the churches that left were churches where 2/3 of the people said, no, we're more traditional and we're not sure we can stay in a church where, where there's a different view on that. But when it comes to politics, we surveyed our congregation anonymously. We found that 40% of our people identified as Republicans, 40% as Democrats, and 20% as independents. So it's interesting, you're talking about preaching.
You're reaching the community.
Exactly. And so if you're reaching non-religious and nominally religious people, you're going to be reaching more Democrats. And so, because just statistically, more non-religious and nominally religious people are Democrats. And
that's actually true. Mm-hmm.
And so if you really want to reach them, you got to figure out, how do I do that? Because if they come to church and feel like they're hearing a Republican rally, they're not coming back. That's not going to cut it. So it works if your church is large. If all you want to reach is in the United States, the red crowd, you're probably going to be fine. But if you're serious about reaching, so we talk about
diverse
this.
crowd.
Yeah. One of the things we did, and I'm very excited about this. One of those things had to do with healing the polarization in Kansas City. And so we said, and not just in Kansas City, but across the country to the degree that we could. So we began looking at every 2 years, starting in 2020, we will have our own election campaign. And we have yard signs, we have campaign buttons, we have television spots, radio spots, billboards. I preach into it. We have gatherings built around this, and they're always about depolarizing our community. So, and we're going to take a theme that is clear in scripture that Republicans and Democrats who are people of faith would all agree this is an important idea. And so the first one was love your neighbor. It was hashtag love your neighbor. And we had about 5,000 yard signs out, and we preached into it right before the presidential election in 2020. And throughout the year, talking about why it's important that we listen to each other. We walk in each other's shoes. Here's how we do that. Let me model that for you. Small group participation with people who view things differently. Activities that we did together. Then 2 years later in 2022, we had a campaign that was the Be campaign. Be just, be kind, be humble, based on Micah 6:8. And so again, now we're going to actually live this in the community. This time around in 2024, it's the Do Unto Others campaign. And the logo is a heart, where the sort of upper lobe of the heart on one side is Republican red and on the other side is Democratic blue, and then it becomes purple below, and it's do unto others. And we're just going to talk about what does it look like. Jesus said that the law and the prophets hinge on this one idea: do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. So how are we going to do that as followers of Jesus? And anyway, our people are pretty excited about it. We've got hundreds of other churches joining us. We're providing materials for them. But what happens if the church becomes known as the entity that's trying to bring people together, as opposed to the church becoming the wedge in the culture wars? And again, for unchurched people, that sounds like the kind of church they want to be a part of, not the culture warriors that are that they've come to associate with Christianity, and in particular, often, unfortunately, evangelical Christianity.